And we are recording, and I want to welcome all of you to joining me today. It's a lovely weekend, and I'm doing this from my home office. Many of you have seen this home office in the background before, but today there is an even greater reason to sort of share with you what the background looks like and why I use the background that I do, and not a green screen or something else. We're going to talk about a lot of different things today, all focused on how you show up on camera, on video, as your best self, and why that's so important. The why is really important. It's not just about looking good or trying to impress somebody else. It's actually about how are we showing up for people and showing that consideration to others whom we want to build relationships with during this time. Okay, so it's a different kind of approach. The background that I'm coming to you with is kind of interesting. As I was saying before we got started, one part of my life that many people don't know a whole lot about, aside from those who are very close to me and those who are like family members and things like that, is that over the years I have had a little bit of a side hustle. Back when I started it, we didn't even have the term side hustle. So I would moonlight as a makeup artist, and that comes from a background in being involved in makeup and theater and all kinds of things that followed me when I moved to Washington, D.C., and then was asked to begin doing makeup for weddings and ended up becoming one of the primary makeup artists at National Press Club. So the National Press Club, was not the beginning, but it was definitely the place where I began to understand the way that light and camera and all of these things interact in a different way. So when I'm talking to you about the way that you show up on camera and the way that you show up online, understand that you made a good choice in showing up today to get this advice, because I'm not just speaking to you because I do a lot of podcasts from my home office, and with that hat on, I'm actually speaking to you with the experience of as being a makeup artist and working with professionals who show up on camera and have to look good on national TV all the time. So hopefully you'll take this advice and be able to run with it. A little bit about this. This is kind of my dirty little secret that I've been keeping for a while. I started out growing up in Southwest Missouri in the middle of nowhere. Growing up, and one of the things that I enjoyed the most about summers with my mother was a school teacher, was that she always dressed to impress. When she would go to school, she would wear, instead of jeans and sweatshirts and things like that that you see a lot of people wearing today in schools, she went the whole 9 yards and would always put on her lipstick and do her hair and everything. And I would watch her in the morning and just, I thought she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen, and wanted to be a lot like that when I grew up. I always thought that I was proud of her, and I always thought that she looked amazing. But one of the things that we would do when there was nothing else to do in the summertime is we would take magazines and we'd go out on our back patio and we would look through the magazines, talk about fashion, look at the makeup tips. And then my mom bought these mirrors with the 3 different types of lighting settings. And I remember the very first makeup tutorial that she ever had us watch, me and my younger sister. And it was Donna Mills' The Eyes Have It. and, and someone bought this for me a few years ago on VHS, The Eyes Have It. And we would go through and we'd try to recreate these looks. When I got into theater later, the makeup artist took me under her wing and taught me how to do makeup for stage. And over the years, I would do this. Even before I would play pretend in my mirror and dance in my room, I would always, do my makeup and stuff. I learned the difference between the way that you show up for stage and the type of lighting that's created there, what looks good in person, and then also later when video and cameras became more of the thing that I was paying attention to, that was something where, again, the way that the light hits cameras and their lenses interpret the way that light reflects off of your face differently than the human eye does. And so it's very important to understand how light affects the way that your face and the way that you appear impacts who's viewing you. And depending on where you're showing up, you want to be mindful of that. All right, so that's a long, long story to take you to now. Here we are in the present day, and I think it's safe to say that never before have so many people had to show up on video for professional purposes at one time, right? There's never been a reason why we would all have to be showing up on Zoom and Skype and doing all of these meetings on camera so much. But here we are. And so my secret that I had, this little thing that I've done on the side for so long, I think it now is helpful to be sharing some of these things. And so I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad we get to talk a little bit about this and to maybe discuss a little bit about, we'll do a makeup tutorial at the end, but if you're watching and you're not interested in that part, you can totally leave before we get to the makeup tutorial part. I promise it's not going to be super advanced. It's just 30 minutes at the end. But for the next almost hour and a half, we're going to talk about different elements, the technology, the tools that you use, and the setup, and so that you can look the very best that you can when you show up on camera. Great? Great. Okay, I want to launch a poll right now so that everyone can weigh in on the areas that you are most concerned about when it comes to your professional presence. So let me know if you see the poll. It should have just launched to all of you. And just type into the chat, if someone would type into the chat and let me know you're seeing it. All right, well, people are responding. So some of you are seeing it. That's good news. So yes, so the question is, for those who might be listening or watching this later, with what areas of your professional presence on video are you most concerned? This is multiple choice, and you are able to vote on more than one thing. There is one option for all of it, so if you read through all of them and you say, yeah, all of this pretty much sums it up, you can vote on that. But if there's one in particular that really hits home, go ahead and vote. So we have, let's see, 8 of 10 people, so 80% of you have voted now, not 90%, and if we get one more. All right, excellent, 10 of 10. And so we're going to end the poll, and I want to share the results. And so what we see is the two highest that we have from all of them. One is improving my overall appearance. You want to improve your overall appearance at 40%, and 40% all of it, all of it. So these options were knowing what tech and gear I need to use. I feel awkward on camera, improving my overall appearance, connecting better with others virtually, building trust through video, understanding how to make my sound or video quality better. And then underneath all of it was this online video teleconferencing etiquette. I kind of just threw that in at the end because when I have been talking with people about this sort of thing, they've been talking about, well, when is it polite to like let people know that you want to say something and you don't have an easy way to do it? So that seemed to be something that has come up several times. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about each one of these different areas, but it is interesting to see that you're concerned overall. This particular group here is concerned overall with the overall appearance, right? I just want to make sure that I'm showing up the best that I can. Also, we see that you're worried a little bit about all of it, and that actually makes sense because it turns out that most people are feeling awkward when they show up, and according to a study, 30% 30% of this respondents for a particular study, and I'm looking to see who did this, but I can send you the information a little bit later. 30% of the respondents said that they spent half of the video call looking at themselves. Does that resonate with any of you? Have you found yourself doing it? It happens to the best of us. It happens to me too. And it's okay to check every now and then. But when you're checking your frame constantly, you're not looking into the camera and you're not looking at the other people who are also on the call. And if you're the one presenting or if you're the one speaking, then you need to remember, and you can put a little note, post-it note next to the camera to remind yourself to look into the camera, because that's like looking into the person's eyes, right? That's like looking in at least in their general direction, right? And so that's one of the things that you want to do. It also, when you do that, helps you to not focus so much on evaluating your own appearance, which can't we fall down that rabbit hole and get lost for a while? That is definitely something you want to avoid. So even before all of this happened, and now I'm seeing this was a study by Lifesize that was done in 2019. So this is before all of this happened. 48% of business professionals were using more video than 2 years previous to that. And 25% of 19 to 29-year-olds were using video conferencing daily for work. And you use it for meetings, team check-ins, one-on-ones. 25%, and this is before all of this happened. So the trend was clearly there. We were already using Zoom and Skype and all of these things and using it more and more. And then here we are today, and we have to show up in a different way, whether we like it or not, and show up, be present, and do our best to, give a comforting, hopefully credible, reliable appearance that makes other people feel safe. Yeah, Moira said, love hides self-view. Yes, that's a really great thing that you can do if you get distracted looking at yourself. Another thing is, of course, I feel like I would be negligent in my duties if I didn't say that touch-up appearance is a great little button. I think it's everyone's favorite button in their settings for Zoom. And it can help you when you're worried about, you didn't have time to do everything that you wanted to do before you jump on a call. And it can kind of give an overall smoother appearance when you jump on Zoom in particular. So you should opt for video. There are options on Zoom where you don't show your video. If at all possible, opt for video. The reason why is because when people see you, you are more likely to be able to create a closer connection with them and build trust than you are when you don't. So you, by opting not to show who you are or what your face looks like, that is not helping you and may in fact be hurting you when you're on a call with other people and they're showing their videos. You have every right to keep your video off, and sometimes maybe it's better that they don't see, right? But when possible, whenever possible, you do want to show your video. Now let's talk a little bit about the tech and the frame. One of the biggest questions that I get is about if you need a different kind of camera, what do you need to know about the camera? And you do want to have, if you want to spend a little bit of time on video and you envision yourself doing that, and I don't think you would be here if you didn't think that was a concern. You do want to have a camera that is detachable, is something that you can add on. There's so many good cameras. I have a handout for you, an 8-page handout that I'm going to send to you after we get finished here. And in it, I have links to the tools that I mentioned, and they're not off the scale expensive. You can definitely go that direction. But they're also not the cheapies that are going to break after one use. These are things that I've tested myself, and I can say that they're reliable, they're what I use, and I think that they're high quality. You do want to use a detachable camera when possible, and the reason why is because if you end up moving where you're stationed, if you end up having to move from one place to another, if you have your camera built into your laptop or your desktop, and those cameras are never going to be as high quality, then you're limited on what you're able to do. You know, some of the worst cameras that are designed into laptops, and they can be really expensive, wonderful laptops that have a lot of power, but whoever created these cameras that are built into the bottom of the screen, just the shooting up the nose and all of this stuff is just totally avoidable and not a good thing. But I will say this, even the laptops that have the built-in in the front and center on the very top of your screen, you still need to elevate your laptop, or and probably your desktop too, depending on how large it is. You still need to elevate that if you're using the built-in, because the best position for your camera is either eye level or to the hairline. A little bit above usually presents a better experience. All right. All right, are you there? Can you see me? There's a little disruption on the feed, so I want to make sure you can see me okay. Yes. All right. Okay, thank you. All right, so the hairline is really what you want to aim for, because whenever you move the camera a little bit above, it's a more flattering sort of shot. And especially the camera that I end up using, it's a wide camera, so it captures more of the room behind me, and it doesn't make me look wider, but it actually gives a wider shot and makes that more capable. I can't see you. No, so if you dressed up for today and you put on your makeup for today, or if you didn't, don't worry, because I can't see any of you, and I don't think you can see each other either. Um, but I can see you talking to me though, and that's good. You want to aim for that hairline if at all possible. If you use your built-in, elevate your laptop with books, and prop that up. I have a stand that I purchased on Amazon that has a little bit of an angle so that I'm able to type, and it was actually for ergonomic purposes so that I could have a better angle when I'm typing on my laptop during the day. But it has the added benefit of adding a little bit of height to my laptop so that the camera that I use can rest on the top and have a better setting. Oh, and Lynette says, I did put on a little bit of makeup just to look awake. Yes, yes. And when we get to the makeup part at the end, I'll talk a little bit about how you can trick the eye a little bit to make yourself look a little bit awake. And we'll start with minimum, right? We'll start with the very basic that you always should do. I mean, I do this even to go get mail out of my mailbox, but the very basic that you should do, and then where you can build on top of that. All right, so the camera, we talked about that. Again, I have a link to the one that I prefer to use, but there are a lot of different options that are out there. And by the way, these aren't affiliate links or anything, so I have no horse in this race. They're just links to what I use, and so you can check it out. And I also included the price, so you have a rough idea about what the price is for those things. Next thing I want to talk about is lighting, because that's an area that is so easy to mess up. And the reason why is because most of us haven't really thought about, especially if this is the first time that you're working from home all of the time, and you're having to report in regularly, this might be the first time that you really had to say, that window behind me just isn't cutting it anymore, and every single day I'm getting more and more nervous about how I look. You want to avoid the backlighting. Some of these things I feel like we've heard a million times, but I'm just going to say it because if I didn't, then somebody might miss this. But if you have a lot of light behind you, then it's going to not just distract, but if there's more light behind you than coming towards your face, then it's going to make you look like you're in the witness protection program. And you're going to have the darkened profile here. I never should have, gotten involved with that person. You're going to have the profile and shadow in the front, and then stuff lit up from behind, and it's not going to make much sense visually to the eye. And I know that you've seen this before, and it just takes something away from when you're talking to somebody. It's very hard. If you can imagine, even though intellectually we know that we're talking to somebody, it's for business purposes, and they may not be set up with a home studio. We know this intellectually. There's a just in your subconscious, there's part of you that is saying, can I trust this person? Are they really professional? You know, like, why can't I see their face? And you want to make things as easy as possible. For those of you who are familiar with looking at UX, looking at the user experience the whole way through, this is the visual version of that for your presence online. Keep it simple, make it easy for people to connect with you. So how do you do that? Yeah, and you want to send me a shot, and I'll be happy to give you your feedback. Yes. And we'll talk about hair that is colored that's not looking so good on camera. Yeah, yeah, yes. And when we get to the end, we'll cover your questions about those things too. I love this. This is so great. Okay, are you enjoying this so far? Let me know over in the chat how you're feeling about things so far. So I want to know if it's useful. So what I have set up here is called 3-point lighting, 3-point lighting. And it's pretty simple. 3 points, you have 3 different lights. Now, what I use here is a dimmable ring lights. I have a large one, and Deidre's actually seen this one in action, this bad boy. I have a carrying case that comes with it. So I have a large one that sits behind my laptop in the corner of my office facing me. It's dimmable. It has different types of shading filters that I can put on. I have one on each side to provide a more comprehensive sort of coverage of my face, right? So you want it on right and left. And this is, I would say, like the more advanced setup if you want to have a really good setup where everyone can see you really well. The reason why you want it to be dimmable is because it's very difficult to figure out what wattage is the perfect wattage. This looks, you see that it gets overexposed when I do that. And then I can bring it down. And because it's so close to me, I don't want to be overexposed, and I want to make sure that I have the ability to control that brightness. Now, if I ended up going somewhere else, maybe, you know, a few years down the road, the housing market's stable and then we move to a new place or something, I'll want to be able to set this up, and maybe the lighting changes at that point. So you want it to be dimmable, you want it to be adjustable so that you get the maximum usage out of the equipment that you have. Also, these tabletop ones, these desktop ring lights are fantastic because if you end up using your phone for anything, you are going live for any reason, you want to do live streams, you know, so consider this the multi-purpose point in our discussion today, not just about Zoom and on video teleconferences, but on anything. You can use them for that too, and you've got that set up. It is important that you think about the fact that the lighting can shift depending on the time of day. I cover up this largest window in my home office with blackout curtains, because it looks like a spaceship is landing outside of my window every single day. It's beautiful to look outside. When we're not on camera here, I'm going to turn these suckers off. I have one task light, like one regular lamp that sits on my desk that's pretty, and I open up my window and I can look out and the beautiful sun is right there. But that is the brightest window in our entire house, and it beams into it beams into my office. So it looks really tragic and horrible when it comes in and I'm on camera. And so if you have windows like that, you might want to think about getting some blackout curtains or blocking that light out because you can't control what happens. Also, you may have been on and this is another thing, you might DIY it and say, oh, I have great light that comes through. I look beautiful in this light. My desk overlooks this window, and as the light comes in, I look practically ethereal. I look like an angel at certain times of the day on camera, and that's beautiful. Unless the weather changes, a cloud shifts, something happens. You can't control what's happening outside that window, right? And if you can, come talk and we'll do a whole other discussion. I want to interview you, but you can't, right? So because of that, you want to be able to control as much as you can. That really goes into preparation for all of this. Right now, we're not necessarily able to control everything that happens. So if you have, you know, I guess a colleague, a coworker, we're calling them now, a pet that lives underneath your desk, and usually I have mine with me. If they bark or something, we understand what happens these days with interruptions. So I think the most ridiculous thing is to let it break your concentration and pretend like nothing's happened, to keep going no matter what, and everyone's hearing chaos happen but you're not responding to it. you know no, what would you do in normal life? This is real life, right? So you just make note of it. You might mute while you handle the situation and then come back as quickly as you can. Be graceful about it, be apologetic, and then move on. Because when things happen, they happen, and we try to conduct ourselves and hold ourselves together. But we certainly don't want to pretend like nothing's happening because that doesn't make sense. All right, Kathy says, my window faces south and cloud shifts happen. Yikes. Yes, yes. Now, some people were asking me in the past about how do you find the best lighting in your house? How do you know where the best spot is to set up? Because and you don't have to wait for the ring lights to show up. There are still things you can do. If I'm traveling and I'm in a hotel room, I'll move lamps around. And actually, Deidre knows this, because when I went to interview, I was like, oh, wait, this, we need to do stuff. You do the best you can to get the lighting the way that you want it. Yeah, we moved sofas. We did a little bit. Yeah, we did a little bit more. But you were in a super fancy room, right? Oh my gosh, she was staying at the Mayflower and had a gorgeous suite. And so, like, it was absolutely amazing. But there was a lot that we need to do with the lighting to get it right. But you can move lamps around and get it set up the best way possible. Also, if you're doing a short video, say you're doing a 5-minute video that you're going to record for yourself, your purposes, and you're going to share it with clients or members or something later, then maybe you can risk looking ethereal, having the gorgeous lighting at that moment, and trust that weather may work in your favor if you don't see any clouds in the sky, and you can get that sucker recorded and then you can share it. But if it's much longer than that, don't risk it. Figure out how you can secure your spot and make sure that your lighting's under control. So yes, so we talked about lights, we talked about camera. Anything else about lighting before I move on past that? Nothing? I'm just going to check over here in the chat. Yes. Are there different tones of light? There are. There are. So the good thing about the task lighting that is from our lamps and things like that, many of us choose bulbs that are softer bulbs, and so they add sort of a diffused kind of nature to the light, so you don't have to add a diffuser or anything like you would with photography lights. With ring lights, and this is why I really like using ring lights versus photography lights, which can get very expensive, and they can get, as you add diffusers and filters and all of these things, it gets more and more complicated. I have a small enclosed space that I'm usually operating in. So I like to be able to control and have it on a switch. The lights that I use, the large one has a switch directly on it. The lights that I use to the side have little controllers. And what's great is that I can try to not just move it up and down and control the vibrancy of the light, the intensity of the light, but I can also change the type of light. So this is a brighter light. I am very Barbara Walters with what I go with, which is a softer, warmer light. My tendency, I have high contrast in my coloring, so I have dark hair, dark features, pale skin, and so I it's very easy for me to look washed out. And what happens is when I put my makeup on, the light reflects off of it. And even if I were to walk out right now, and if we had natural sunlight coming in, you would see this would be a lot brighter. But because of the way that the light is reflected off of the makeup I'm using on my skin, and the fact that I have high contrast, the cameras are trying to adjust for that. And because of that, the way that the balance works is that it will make it so that I'm a little bit more washed out looking pretty easily. And so I have to, lower the intensity almost as low as I can go on these lights. Sometimes I'll even put a scarf over them to try to warm up what I look like. I use the warmest light that I can. And then I use a little bit more pink in my blush so that I can, now if I were to walk outside in the bright sunlight, it might look a little much. So that's why you have to kind of, play around with it. Looking at your preferences and going into video settings so that you can get a read on how this is translated across the camera is a really good idea before you go on any recording, on any sort of video. And Kathy says, what about rings versus softbox? I love softboxes. I actually used to have those in here, but they just took a lot of room. I'm concerned because I sometimes wear glasses. Yes. So if you have reflective surfaces, and especially with glasses, you don't want to look like you're shining right back at the camera and it's like gleaming from your glasses. Glasses are complicated. They're a big struggle. And in fact, when people go on camera for satellite media tours, a lot of times people who really can't see very well will just choose not to wear their glasses for a while because it's very difficult to work around them. I think soft boxes are better than ring lights in that case, Kathy, because you're not going to have that bright ring that instead of it bouncing off of the eyeballs in here, you're going to have that bouncing off of your glasses. So you would want to consider the softbox. That said, you're going to have to look for, unless you have a huge space, which if you do, that's great. But if you want to set up in a small space, like a lot of our home offices are, you're going to want to try to get the smaller softboxes. Really watch the intensity, and I would even suggest, because I used to have soft boxes in here and it just was too intense, I would suggest getting some panels that you can slide inside of those soft boxes, and they offer additional filters, and you can get them and they're like sheets, kind of like what privacy screens on your laptop. They're kind of like this, and they slide into the light boxes, and it cuts the intensity. All right. And you're saying worried about reading a teleprompter and you have a small space. Yeah, the teleprompters, and there are a lot of different teleprompters, and I didn't prepare anything or have any links for those, but there are a lot of really good ones that are out there, and you definitely don't want to worry about not being able to see if you're reading off of a teleprompter. So that's a really good point. Another thing that I wanted to talk about, so we talked about our lights, we talked about our camera. Let's talk about the frame. People get this wrong all the time, and they might have everything else right, but they get this part wrong. When you're going to do a webinar or when you're trying to connect with people, so our psychologist who's on here will know the mirroring thing very well. Anyone who's studied communications knows that when you're trying to build up in your nonverbals, a really great way to build up a rapport is to have a little bit of mirroring. Not like you're, mimicking them, but when you mirror what you see, it makes people feel like there's a connection and they feel like they can relate to you, right? And so what you want to do is try to mirror them if you're meeting with, say, a client. Now, if you're getting ready to do a webinar, if you're getting ready to do an interview, or if you're like me and you're just going to go up and you're going to present something on your own, you always want to have a little bit of this, about this much headspace at the top between your head and the frame. And the reason why is because visually and aesthetically, this is a more appealing view for the person who's watching it, right? If you're going to have a webinar with other people, try to match that space. So for instance, if Deidre was on here and Colleen was on and Heidi, we would want to try to match this space at the top and all have about the same, because I'm sure we've all been on those where like one person's up here and one person's down here. And I mean, and I'm even on team calls right now where it's like the person's like this, right? And it's crazy. So if you want to put a professional appearance on it, then you want to try to match it so that there's about this much space, right? It's so distracting too. It is. Why is it distracting? Okay, and this is the thing that's kept me from talking about, appearance stuff and visual stuff for so long in the association space that I work in. Because it seems on the outside, it seems superficial to be bothered by this. But understand that if you study psychology, even if you study learning and how the human mind works, you understand that from the very beginning, how did we learn to survive? How did we evolve as human beings? Is we would notice movement. Okay, there's movement in the bushes. We're about to get pounced on and eaten. We notice movement, right? So I read some advice recently where somebody was saying, keep your hands out of the frame. Don't keep your hands out of the frame. Don't. The reason why is because tell me the last time that you were really, really super distracted and annoyed because somebody moved their hands too much. It's not great. It's not a great thing to just be sitting like this the whole time, because we all get bored stiff. If you are speaking, if you are talking, I'm going to do it more now. If you're talking, the best thing to do is to move back a little bit so that people can see your hands. Why? Because as speakers, we know why. We know that people pay attention. So if you don't want to have mindless motion, but if you're expressive, then you do want to use your hands. This is a way that we communicate. Now I'm totally conscious of it. But what I'm saying is, don't be sad or feel bad if you move your hands, and by God, don't think that you should avoid it, right? These are all modes of communication, and we want to use our hands. Okay, Deidre says, last Friday I had the pleasure of looking up someone's nose because he was recording from a handheld phone. Yeah, and another thing that I've seen is, if we want to talk a little bit about background, is the green screen being overused or misused in so many ways. Green screens are great. If I saw a really great example of someone using a green screen when, her husband was having to quarantine in their home from the rest of the family because he was sick and nobody else was sick. And she was in a part of the home that she wasn't normally working from. Her son's home with her. And guess what? He's young. There's a mess in the background. She didn't want to worry about that. She didn't have time to worry about that. And so she was able to use the background filter. And I think that's an excellent use of the background filter. Like, put up something. If you are in survival mode and you are trying to carry on with your life and conduct business, then my gosh, by all means do that. If you have time to set things up the best way possible, there are retractable green screens that you can get that can make that look even better. I actually have, I have several. I have a really large one that I can set up, but it's too big for my office. I have one of these guys that's a pop-up that you can take it out. It has a blue side and a green side, and it will be the expanse of this space, what you would see. And all I have to do is connect it to two of my tripods. It'll be in the background, and then I can put any background that I want. By the way, you can design any background that you want, including one with your logo. Keep it very simple. I've seen some cool ones. I've seen some super cool ones. If you're doing a trivia show, if you're having fun, if it's a happy hour, if you're having a party or something like that and it's virtual, have fun with it. cats in the toasters flying across your screen, great. But if you're having a regular meeting or a professional meeting, a professional webinar, don't do it. You know, go simple. Simple is better. Also, consider your background and think about ways that you can share a little bit about yourself in a positive way in your background. Years ago, I learned a decorating trick that is one of the things you can do to quickly spruce up your home office so that you look more organized and stylish is to color coordinate your books. So an interior designer was saying that this was their trick. And I took a Saturday and I color coordinated my books. And now when I buy a book, I'm very conscious of, I don't buy them because they're orange or something, but I'm very conscious of what color they are because I'm thinking about, do I have space in the blue section of my, and I always make space for good books, but I will look to see, and I'm very aware of the lack of purple books that are out there and things like that. Like I have a weird new knowledge that I never thought that I would ever know. Like, but there aren't that many books published in purple. But you know, it's you want to color coordinate them. And what does this say? I'm curious what you think about this. What do you think that this says? What do you think that this communicates without me ever saying anything about it? If you were to see me for the first time and this is my background, what are some judgments that you would make if you were to assess who I am, you know, how I conduct my business? What does this say to you? Organized, organized, thoughtful. I mean, these are meticulous. Thank you. It makes me feel even better. So, what I want you to think about is what does your background look like and how can you actually use that to say something about you and to make that person on the other side feel safer. Sperry says, I would assume it makes you appear more organized, but actually it just makes the image much more pleasing to the eye. Yeah, both. I understand the reason, but it always strikes me as obsessive, so maybe I'm a bit weird. You know, the red books make me think about love and the yellow seems happy. Interesting. You know, I switched out, these used to be, I used to have the orange books on the top, and then I switched it out. And what's funny about that, Deidre, is that I switched it out because I did want to focus more on the heart. And I wondered if that wouldn't translate. So that's interesting that you said that. Yeah, I used to have the orange on the top because orange is supposed to be innovative, right? And it's supposed to be imaginative. And then I kind of got bored with the orange and I thought, what should go up there? There's a whole new level. But it is interesting if you think about this from not just it has to be pleasing to you, and I want you to be in alignment with who you are, right? You want to communicate and be in alignment with who you are, not to try to be somebody else. But how can you best be in alignment with who you are or who you're presenting yourself to be to the people you're meeting with on these calls? You know, there are certain aspects that we all have that we don't necessarily, they don't help us in the relationships that we have with other people right now. So a great example is if I set this up in a different part of my house, you would see that there are guitars and there's a piano and there's like music's a big part of my life too. But that doesn't help me when I'm, you know, if I wanted to bring in a little bit of that to connect with someone, then that might be something that I would put in my background. But if I'm trying to not distract, but to connect with people, I feel like one of the things that makes people feel safer when they're working with me, because I'm very imaginative and I am full of ideas and I have a lot of non sequiturs. I need this. I need organization in my background to show organized thought. I need to translate to people visually that they're safe, that I am thoughtful. I do think about a lot of details that even if I get distracted by telling a story, I am thorough. And so that's the sort of thing that I'm trying to communicate subtly through having a little bit of my background showing through. And it's also, this is also why I didn't share that part of my life, about being a makeup artist, because the makeup artist side of my life, that type of expertise, is not going to make you feel safer when you're hiring me for your communication strategy. Because if you know that I've applied, mattifier to Alan Greenspan's head, that's not going to be the thing that makes you feel safer when we're discussing, how I can help you communicate trust to your members, right? So you just have to think about the types of things that you're revealing, not just in your, LinkedIn profile and maybe the things that you're talking about with people, verbally and through your writing, but also what you're putting forth in your background, in your decor, and the things that you're sharing with people. This could go a lot deeper in that direction, but why don't we move to another aspect, okay? And that's about sound. Now, one of the things that if I were talking back and forth with you that I would want to do, if I were doing an interview, is to have headphones in. The reason why it's so important to have headphones in is because on these, especially the more people that you add, at any point there can be an echo issue. That echoing, is so annoying. And when sound gets disrupted, it can be very, very difficult to come back from that, because if the quality of the picture isn't good, you can look at something else. But if the quality of the sound isn't good and you're trying to communicate, you've got a real problem, because you're not getting the message across at all. So it is important when you're looking at doing video that you really take a lot of time to consider having great audio. I had a question about microphones and that kind of thing. So I, of course, on this handout that is 8 pages long that you're going to get after this, there is information about the different types of microphones that I use. I have different microphones for different purposes. Right now I am using a Blue Yeti that's not the preferred for some audiophiles that's out there, but it does have it has different switches on it, so you can choose which type of microphone, condenser versus cardioid, that you are using. And so this is the more, I guess, transportable, the smaller version of the Blue Yeti that I have. I have a Blue Snowflake. My very favorite microphone that I am not using today is and I'll show you over here. This is my association chat setup over here. But I actually have an ATR 2100, and this is actually a cheaper microphone too, but it's so high quality, it's so good. I bought the windscreen for it, right? And it's the Audio Technica, and I actually say on the handout that I have for you and the link, you can just click on it and go directly to it, so you'll see exactly the right one. But I have this ATR 2100 that is just amazing, and its sound is fantastic. There's another thing that I could do about podcasting that would tell you all about, I could tell you all about, different tools you could use if all you're concerned about is audio. You want to interview someone, you want really great audio, you don't want to use a mixer. There's a tool called Zencastr, and use that. You can actually edit the sound. It's super high quality, and if you don't have to worry about the visual element, you can use that and get good high quality. So there's a little bonus for you today. All right. So let's see here. You just bought one and you can't figure out the settings. Here's a little secret about the Blue Yeti that they have for the latest versions that you buy is you can go on, I don't know if you've done this or not, you may have, but you can go on and download the companion piece where you can adjust the levels and test it on your own laptop. And so go and check and see if they have because you have to download, the one that that this particular one is the most recent one I bought, and I bought it when was traveling, and the other one broke. But you can actually go in and adjust the settings and test it within that. And then Sperry said, so true, bad audio can take a whole call down. It can. And again, when people jump on, reminding them to mute sounds absolutely ridiculous now. But if you have control ahead of time, of course, start where everyone is muted upon entry and they have to unmute themselves. But what's tragic is the mobile calls. That's almost always where a lot of that danger zone with audio, I've seen it really fall off the rails with that. All right. So we've talked a little bit about the different tech tools and everything. I guess the other thing I would remind everyone to do is to always look at all of your windows that are open, always look at the programs that are running, and remind everyone in your house ahead of time to turn off, stop streaming Netflix. Like I have the highest quality Wi-Fi package, fastest Wi-Fi package I can have. And right now, I'm not using it. I'm using my landline so that I have a really super strong connection, but I have a plan B and a plan C. If one thing fails, jump to the other. And, what I would suggest though, in all cases, I still do this, is shut down all of your other programs before you get started. And also, if you have time to do it, if you know you've got a really important video that you've got to be on and you're live streaming, or you're going to be on live with people, shut down and restart everything with a lot of time ahead of time, like an hour before, okay? So that if there's any big changes that have hit on any of your stuff, you find out about it and can restart and get all of that fixed before you go live. Over the years, I've had just about every kind of tech disruption problem, everything that could go wrong, including an earthquake, happen while I have been live on video. So a fire, actually, Peggy Hoffman, if any of you know her, has a video of me going from giving a presentation in a room inside of inside of a building to everyone having to leave because of a fire and continuing the presentation on outside, and we were live streaming it, so she jumped to her phone and continued recording. So I'm saying, I understand things can go wrong, but just try to control as much as possible ahead of time before you go live. Wow, where are we? Yay, I can't believe it. So this is a good point for me to do a temperature check with you, because we're almost at 12:30. We started at 11:30, and we've talked about 3 of the main points that I want to talk about. We have 3 more to get through, and then the tutorial where I'm going to walk through talking about makeup. But I wanted to check in with you and see how you're doing. How is everyone? And is there any more about the tech that you want me to cover before we move on? Not so much. Not so much. Is it fantastic? And the tech tips have been awesome. Wonderful. Wonderful. And like I said, I've got this handout for you that has links if you want to go and check those out. I really love these particular ring lights that I'm using. So I have the link for the one that sits behind my computer. It's my big ring light, and then I have for the 2 desktops. I use the same thing, and I have the link for that too. So you guys can check that out. And again, they're not affiliate links, so I won't know if you check them out or not. The thing I love about these desktop ones that I purchased, they have a level that's built in. So if you want to make sure that things are level, you can. They also have these additional attachments that will make it super easy if you want to go live and use your devices, use your phone or something like that on the side. You can use it or you don't have to. And they're dimmable. You can change it. They're adjustable, and they're on. They also have the retractable legs so that you can actually extend them, and they're very versatile. And Kathy, yes. Okay. What about lav versus Yeti type mics? Yeah. So I have a lav mic that I use when I'm going onto my phone, when I'm going onto my phone devices. You can use a lav mic for this too. It would totally work with my laptop. I think I use this one primarily because I'm always stationed here from my home office, and so I'm used to just moving it kind of out of the way that I have all of my USB port. I have one of those detachable USB ports that has multiple, ports in it because I have a lot of different tools that I use. And so I this is the way that I set it up here. But I love a good lav mic. I think the only reason that I don't use it maybe regularly here is I save them for my interviews when I'm going to meet with people using my phone. And when I do that, they're sort of thinner wires, and I've had it happen where I thought I was so cool because I had the one input, and then I had three different lav mics that were attached to the same wire. And I was in California and I was interviewing several people. I'm not where I can go, I have one backup, but it's just one lav mic. And of course, there was a short in one of the wires, and I totally didn't catch one other person. And so it's just made me a little bit tentative and a little bit hesitant to use my lav mic and depend on it. That said, I wouldn't go live on my phone for a super professional reason unless I was just doing like a Facebook Live really fast or something. I wouldn't do it without a lav mic because for audio, you just definitely want to have a really good mic. Is your Yeti on a boom overhead or on the desk? Aha. Okay, I love having them overhead, and I also love the extendable arms. So for my setup, I have a desktop over here, and I do a lot of my major video editing on this baby because it has a lot more storage and stuff. But when I used to it's getting older and I love it, but I'm going to have to replace it soon. And so I don't go live from this one anymore because I need more stability. But when I used to, I had my extendable arm here that was adjustable. And then, of course, with my podcast little flag here, my mic flag, and then the adjustable microphone. And this is an awesome setup. I love this because you're not only getting your branding in, but it's totally adjustable. So if you want it in or not, you don't have to. I prefer to use this microphone to do my recording on. That said, this is really great too, and I've been using it a lot more. I don't have this one on. I'm gonna be careful with it so I don't mess you up. I don't have this one on a boom stand, and I don't have it on any kind of stand. I have it on my desk right now. And the reason why is because this is my laptop setup, and I take my laptop everywhere and I move around, and so I just wanted it to be something that I could easily detach and not have to do much with. And I just haven't set it up that way yet. But I might, I really like having the ability to just have my stuff set up and out of the way. And, one of the big changes I made just this year was moving out my softbox lighting and moving these ring lights in to set up in this space. So that might be the next change that I make, actually. What does that black microphone spongy cover do? It's like a windscreen. Does everyone need that? Asking for a naked Yeti. It's just a windscreen. So if you pop your peas or anything like that, it adds that an additional layer. You also could get the pop filter on top of it to help it even more. That's just a windscreen. So like if I get super excited, it's not going to blow everybody's audio. But to be honest, I didn't have the black microphone spongy cover on it for a long time. So, and I didn't have any problems with it. I just felt like I wanted to add an additional layer for the sound. These are good questions. I'm having fun with this. All right. So let's talk a little bit. I have a pop filter for recording. Yeah, and you can get the so for this one, I usually have when I'm using it more regularly, I usually have something that attaches here and then the guy comes up here and can be on that. Now the only thing is that when I'm on camera, it doesn't look good to have this much, on top of it. So I remove it if I'm going to use it for camera stuff. But if I'm recording just for audio, then I like to have that additional layer there for the pop filter. All right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about. We talked about our lighting. We talked about our equipment. Let me look over on my list here. Okay, so and filter with a video. I just don't want to block out too much of the space for communication. So another thing that's really important to me in connecting with people is it's a delicate balance that we do. We want to have our sound really clear because that helps us to be understood better. But we also, we want to make it so that we're not adding things that make it difficult for people to connect. So one question that I've had to answer for myself is headphones versus earbuds and stuff like that. And it applies because this is the same reasoning I use for this pop filter idea. I added the windscreen here. I don't have a larger pop filter. And the reason why is because I really want to connect with people and I don't want to add more technology to take away from that experience. So in this case, I don't have to hear, so I don't have to use the headphones and or the earbuds. But what I've moved to doing is using earbuds rather than headphones when I'm on. And the reason why is because of what I just said. Like I can add this and it's not as distracting as if I have two in, or even if I have, and for years I had the headphones. And the headphones are great for sound quality, but the problem is I add this additional layer and it makes me separate from you. It separates me from the people I'm talking to. So I want to eliminate that and make it as easy as possible for people to connect. And so I'm trying to go more minimalist on the technology that I have in the shot. Because I'll say this, like this to me looks really cool and it looks very professional, and what this adds is a trust signal for people who are if you're wanting to sponsor my podcast, or if you want to know that you're giving your time to be a guest on a podcast that's legitimate and it's not just somebody doing something off of their phone, this is going to make you feel safer. You're going to feel like you're talking to somebody who knows what they're doing, right? But for something like this, do I need that? If I'm really talking to you about how to relate, I probably don't need that as much. That's not necessarily the trust signal that you need to pick up on. It might help. I don't know. I would always choose black over white. The white earbuds are what I have the most of because I have Apple stuff and everything, and so I have a lot of white things. And so I wish that the answer were different, just because it means that I have to buy more stuff. But at least the black ones are not as expensive usually. So I have a good pair of black ones that I have recently purchased and that have really great reviews. They're really high quality for what they are with a low price. And I have a link to those. When I say that I'm sharing links to things I'm using, it's links to things I'm using that are vetted, guys. This is what I am using because I've tried a lot of different things. The white shows up more on camera. So black you don't notice it as much. And, even if you had like blonde or light colored hair, the black just seems to diminish a little bit more rather than white, which reflects light. The white reflects light. And so people see it and it looks bigger. You need the black ones. Yes, yes. So I would always choose something that is more minimalist in nature for what shows up on tech because you don't want it to just, scream out. And I've always wondered about that for Apple actually, because the design is very simple, but because it's so white, it's impossible to keep clean, and it also reflects a lot of light. It draws a lot of attention, which I guess is good for branding, but not so user friendly. And it's definitely something that sticks out and can be jarring to the eye. So you don't want to necessarily do that. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about your setup and your surroundings too, and that is if you feel like you're giving a little bit too much away by having personal effects and stuff in the background. I really I have to say, you don't want it to be cluttered. You don't want to share maybe everything about your life, but I think a little bit of showing your human side is really good. You want things that are going to let people know that you're not just an Instagram profile or something. I think it's good to not have everything be perfect, because we want to see that the person on the other side of things is a real human being. It sounds a little bit ridiculous, I know, but especially now with things where you have deep fakes where people are talking to AI and they don't even know it, I just feel like if you're wanting to establish trust, especially in a day where trust is in decline, especially right now where trust is in decline for all kinds of institutions that a lot of us have hoped would be reliable in the past, the best thing we can do for people is to show up in alignment with who we are and to give them a sense of security, right? Is to show, I want you to know I'm reliable. I'm going to show up when I say I'm going to show up. And I'm a human being, a real human being that you can ask questions of, that you can connect to. So I like to show a little bit of personality. There's a little bit of mess back here. I mean, it's a little cluttered. I I prefer to have it a little cluttered right now, because I think that right now having a little bit of a homey vibe back there isn't such a bad thing. And I'll probably, want to clean it up and align, line it up a little bit differently in the future. But for now, I think that it gives a little bit of a sense of this is a real human being who's living and working from this office, and so hopefully it gives you the idea that I'm not a fake person, right? All right. So we talked a little bit about that. Let's talk a little bit about, and this is not to talk just about makeup, which is what we'll go into next. But if you're not staying for that tutorial, this is the thing that everyone needs to know, right? No matter who you are and whether or not you think that it's an important part of your life or not, you need to know this. There are two things that I do every time I go in to work with someone before they go on camera. And it is cut the red and reduce the shine. Cut the red, reduce the shine. And before I move on, Colleen says, I was on a call with our leadership yesterday, and the first vice president commented that my office and said it looked like me. Color, lots of books, and a comfy chair. Colleen, I have seen your background, and I have to agree. And it said good things about you. Like, I already liked you, but when I saw your background, I'm like, those rich fabrics and colors and everything were, it just says so many great things. It says that there's depth and this sort of like, you're not just vibrant in person, you're vibrant throughout your life. I mean, if anything, it further tied out your persona for who I thought you were. I'm like, this is who she is, like this is her at home. This is Colleen, like this is Colleen, right? And so I have to agree. I think that your style obviously translates all the way through from home to the way that you dress, to the way you present yourself. And it's a really great example of how what you see is what you get. Now, there are a lot of other aspects to a human being, but I feel like when I see your background, like it ties out to who I know you to be, and it makes me feel like I can trust you a little bit more. And I feel like that advances our relationship a little bit more, right? So, and that's kind of a lucky thing that I have had the chance to see her background too, because I know for a fact that is the way that it is. And I think I even commented on it at the time too. I really loved her background. Cut the red, reduce the shine. So when you're on camera, a lot of us, especially me, those of us who have thin skin, not just thin skin because we get our feelings hurt easily, but also if it's pale and sort of translucent, truly thin skin, right? So the capillaries and everything, they can liven up. Even as I'm paying more attention, you can see it starting to happen. So, little trick. I look good in red. I like red. Red is like my signature color. I love red. I love all jewel tones, and you're gonna see that when I show up for photos and videos, most often, sometimes I can't help myself because I need a little red, but most often I'm gonna be showing up in a blue. And the reason why is because blue cuts red. Blue reduces red. I have a tendency to have red that shows up, especially if I get scared, fearful, my heart starts pumping fast. Red shoots up and will take over my face, will take over my chest and my neck and all of that stuff. Blue cuts red. So blue, and it can be any shade of blue. So I'm not saying everyone has to wear the same shade, but blues are very forgiving, by the way. Almost everyone looks good in some shade of blue. Blue will cut red naturally. It will tone down any red effects that start to come out in your face. And so I like to wear a really vibrant sort of royal blue, but navy. I love black. I actually hate navy. I really do. But on camera, it shows up as black most of the time, and it's as close to black as you can get without it being that way. But it has just enough blue that it helps me in reducing the redness that I have in my skin that comes out. So cutting the red's very important. Another thing is, and this is for men too, no matter who you are, you need to consider reducing the red and reducing the shine. So cut the red, reduce the shine. Reducing the shine can be as simple as blotting your face where you get oily before you go on camera. But and you could use a tissue to do that. But I have an older brother who is 14 years older than me, but he's a reporter in Baltimore. He's a man's man. He goes out. He loves to he's just who he is. And but he has a compact of powder that he keeps with him at all times. The reason why is if you ever have to jump on camera, the camera will take red and will exaggerate it. So my lips are not just red, they are vibrant red, like they're racing out to meet you, right? These books are racing out to meet you. So you want to be able to have some kind of a powder that you can cover at least broken capillaries around your nose. Men, I'm giving you an excuse to use a little bit of powder, reduce the shine. Yeah, and Lynette says, me too, embarrassing when it happens. I just blame it on the wine. Sperry says, thoughts on making sure your clothing color doesn't blend into your background? Yeah, absolutely. If you use a green screen, never, ever, ever use green because you'll look like you're popping out. Your hands and your face are popping out. If you use a blue screen, don't wear blue. And also, with your background, and there are different things you can do with backgrounds where you can make them blurry depending on what you're using, so you can sort of make them faded and not pay as much attention to what's happening in your background. I would say always make sure that you're not, if I were wearing this shade, that's sort of a sage green, it's really supposed to be kind of a gray, but it reads as like a sage green on here. I wouldn't want to wear anything close to that because it would actually, not only would it wash me out, but would make me blend into the background. I will say jewel tones are a really great way to go. Think neutrals and jewel tones in general. Pale shades of any colors, pastels, things like that tend to wash anyone out. And it's not a rule for everyone, okay? These things can be different for different people, but in general, jewel tones usually look good on anyone's skin. And pastels are a danger zone. You can go really, really wrong and look very washed out and sickly. So I guess if you want to look sick, that's a good way to do it. One time when I was in high school, I knew that I wanted to take a sick day the next day. I guess you didn't call them sick days. I wanted to cut school and be able to say I was sick or something. So what I did was I have high contrast in my skin, but my lips are extremely pale. So if I don't wear some kind of color on my lips, they sort of fade into everything, and I look anemic. So anyway, I knew that I wanted to do this, and so what I did was I just wore a pale pink gloss, and I wore like white and pale pink, which by the way is a look. That's a look. I could do that. I could walk out. It would be like 1920s. I know how to rock that look, right? But on screen, we're working with this section up here. And that would make me look sick. And it did. And people were like, "Are you feeling okay? Are you feeling okay?" And so you don't want to necessarily do that unless you're meaning to look ill. Is it okay to wear black? You can wear black, but I would say that a dark navy is better. It reads better on camera. Yeah, no, black is good. And I use black. I do. I will say that any of our dark colors, we always have to be careful for smudges and things like that. Any kind of lint that will show up. But black is fine. I wear black all the time, so I wouldn't get too caught up in that. But navy is good for cutting the red, so I've been trying to incorporate more dark navy into my wardrobe if I know I'm going to be recorded. Best necklines, Lynette, this is such a timely question. Don't ever wear spaghetti straps. Don't ever, because we're going into spring and summer. So this is a very important time to ask this question, especially when we're working from home. The other day I saw someone who logged into a meeting, and I could tell she was like sitting on her bed because it had this really lovely background, right? The problem was you could kind of get over the idea that this tufted background is she's probably sitting in bed if it didn't look like she was wearing a negligee. She was wearing a negligee because we had really high temperatures here, like 4 days ago. I don't know. It was the beginning of the week. And she had the spaghetti strap thing on. And of course, things were positioned differently. So she's down here. We only see these straps, and we see like a bed, behind her. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this looks so terrible. It's not a good idea. And yeah, so basically the rules for like your headshot, any rules that you would have for your headshot, you want to think about for Zoom. I have to be very cautious about some of the necklines I have. This is about as deep as I want to get with my necklines. Now, if you saw the whole rest of my outfit, and I had on something that was a little bit lower, but you saw, or off the shoulder, but you saw that I had on a maxi dress that goes all the way down and could trip me up, that I'm walking on, that would be fine. It would be proportionate. It would make sense fashion-wise. Not on Zoom. Does not make sense. Don't wear that outfit if you're going to be on Zoom. And the reason why is because all I'm seeing is this part, and this looks to me like you could be propositioning me at some point. I don't know. So yeah, be very careful with your necklines, just because we are visual people. Humans are visual animals, and we take in a lot of information, and we have these visual cues that we've learned, visual cues we've learned over time. And you may not. You will see the rest of what's happening with your outfit, with your decor. You're going to see the rest of what's happening, but we only see what's in this frame. So you have to be very mindful of how that's being interpreted on the other side. For men, if they wear a suit or tie normally, should they show up on Zoom suit, jacket, tie, or do you have another recommendation for a business look for men? So I'll say that for men, they should definitely show up similar to how they would. Right now is a weird time because would it feel right? And I don't know who you usually talk, the people you usually talk to, would it feel right for you? And I don't know your style either. If you show up in a very traditional looking, the kind of office I wish I had, which was like traditional sort of library style, these grand bookcases everywhere, leather everywhere, it'd be amazing. Um, you know, I like a traditional sort of look. But if you had that and it looked like you might very well have leather bound copies of, Shakespeare over to the side, then maybe it makes sense that you show up in your tie, right? In your suit jacket. However, if you are operating from home and it's not quite to that level, then it might be fine that you're showing up, but you have a collared shirt. Collared shirts show that you are professional, that you are wearing something that's professional, but it's taken down a notch, right? So it's almost as if it's the end of the day professional look. Does that make sense? So that it's not quite so buttoned up to the top, because that might look a little OCD for the right people. Okay, and Sperry says, oh, and I'm female, but I lead a team that's getting deployed into Zoom and many are male. Thanks. Yeah, yeah. So it depends on their style, it depends on what is in alignment with who they are. I would say that, if their question is about wearing a suit and tie, is that the way that would make their client feel the most comfortable, or would it seem odd? And so, I don't think it's okay to show up for the most part, for most of us to just say, well, yeah, I was just downstairs decorating Easter eggs with my kid and I came in to do this and now I'm going to go back. I think we have to put an effort to make people at ease whom we're meeting with so that we're showing up as the people we say we are. But that's not to say that we all have to suddenly dress up as if, it's we are exactly going into the most important, three-piece suit kind of situation that we need to be in. I think that there's probably some somewhere in the middle where it would make more sense. That said, I'm gonna go back and say, if it's in alignment with who you are, if you're the kind of person that dresses like that anyway, then definitely show up like that. All right. Did I miss anything? I think men look good in a mock polo or crew sweater. True. Yeah, I think so too. It just depends on the style because, I've seen examples where that mostly works. That mostly works. So if you think like business casual, I think that works. But it's I don't know. It's kind of iffy. I know this. You shouldn't wear small patterns. You shouldn't wear stripes. You shouldn't wear, even if they are going the right direction, ladies, you shouldn't wear stripes on camera because it can do all kinds of weird things. It renders oddly and does not look great on camera. So what you want to try to do is look for solids. Look for solid, avoid your print. Can you wear them? Yes, and I have before, and it's fine. You can have a print, especially if it's something that is a graphic where there's stuff. But I promise you, if you're going to go back in time and you're going to review these videos and review the images of yourself in these things, especially videos, it might be a good big picture if they can see like the whole look. But if you are confined to something like this size, you're going to wish that you wore mostly solids and very simple, very, very basic clothing. I promise you. I've been doing this for years and on a weekly basis, and I promise that that's how you're going to feel. Pay more attention to how people on your local news stations dress and how people who have to be on camera all the time will always end up trying to wear solids as much as possible because mostly they won't be able to get on air if they're wearing a pattern. But if they do, it's most likely a guest, right? It's not the people who usually do this for a living because Well, there are stylists backstage that stop them. You're not supposed to wear prints or stripes on camera. I've noticed that in just being on calls for the past 4 weeks, if I'm on larger calls, I wear solids for the day. Yes, it's a really great idea. And I will say also that I have awesome prints. I like have some great dresses. And if you know me from being in person, like I really I have some amazing fashion wear that I like to wear. I can't wear it on camera very often, or on video, I should say, very often, because it just doesn't render well. Heavier makeup or lighter. Always try to aim for, and I guess now that we are at 1 Eastern time, I can start to go into this. So I would suggest that you, if you're going to be in a darkened room and you're going to add more light, understand that you're probably going to be reflecting more light. So you might want to add a little more definition to your brows and into your cheeks for color than you normally would. You also need to be mindful. You don't have to be like a full red or something like that. You can definitely do a neutral for lips, but you want to do something that does define where your mouth is, right? Because all this light is reflecting out. So you're trying to make it so that your expressions and your features are making sense and rendering well on camera. Jewelry, try to go light on jewelry. Don't wear jangly jewelry. And even if, again, this is all proportion, right? If you see the whole look and you see that it's very minimalist on top and there's a flowy bottom and it makes sense to have the flowy earrings that go with it, don't do that on camera though. When you have a little box that you're in, because that will be distracting and it will take up too much percentage of space on this screen. Moira says, I think in the age of COVID, the bedroom might be the only quiet place. Yeah. I think I'd angle the camera a different way, though. Yeah, yeah. So it's definitely something that you have to be careful. I think I might have missed something. Okay, yes, on several professional calls lately, beds in the background seems odd to me. Thoughts? It is. It is a little bit odd, and there are ways to deal with that. So you can do the green screen. I would angle it. You and the person that I've seen with the most with the bed in the background, it's truly the only place that she can work from. And so I understand why it's the situation that it is. That said, if I were in the same boat, I'd start to be thinking about, is there a screen that I can put behind me that will block out the rest of the room and allow for privacy if there happens to be anybody in there? Like she has her kid that runs back and forth. And so he might be able to hang out on the bed while she's having her call. And with the screen there, it would block that out and allow both of them to feel a little bit more at peace with what's happening. The other thing is if you can't do that, then you could actually set up a barrier where you have the green screen and is propped up behind you, and you have a different background. And again, that's a different type of barrier that you could have. But if at all possible, you probably should take that out of the background just because it does bring things to mind. If red makes you think of hearts and yellow makes you think of happy, the bed in the background is making me start thinking of you in all kinds of ways I probably don't want to, right? I mean, I really think you're great and all, but I don't need to envision what it's like when you go to bed at night. And so we want to be understanding, but also try to make it so that you still have a little layer of privacy in your home where we have that, that a safe distance socially in what we're seeing into other people's lives. Smoother hair or curly or frizzy? Okay, whatever you have, you want it to not have flyaways. So if you have curly hair, or if you have, and this is what part of my job when I am on set, and I say I backed away from doing a lot of the physical stuff just because a couple of years ago I had back issues and really came to the forefront, and I had to just not take on as many of these. But oddly enough, earlier this year, someone, and the other primary makeup artist is over at National Press Club, got a job with the BBC. And she said, would I be your backup for their anchor person in DC for the BBC that's based their headquarters in DC? And I said, well, how much time would it take? When, what would that look like? And I started thinking about what it would look like to be going in person more often again, to do some of these jobs. And what you always want to do, no matter what kind of hair you're dealing with, you want to go in, male, female, curly, flat, fair, straight, it does not matter. What does matter is, and you'll see, there are these little hairs, and you want desperately to have as much of that tamed as possible. Even if you have crazy wild hair and it's going out here, your afro, your whatever you have needs to be tamed for flyaways. So I actually, oh yeah, portable shoji screen. Yes, it's a beautiful idea for the background. Absolutely. But yeah, my job would literally be half the time to go in between takes. I'm watching for shine. That's another reason we have to talk about this whole shine thing, no matter if you're male or female. Males need to know this especially. I applied mattifier to Alan Greenspan's head. I've put makeup on Bill Nye several years in a row, right? I'm telling you, it doesn't matter who you are. We all need to look about at how we render on screen, right? And I have spackled Alan Greenspan's head with mattifier. That's not awkward at all. No, it is awkward. But what I'm saying is that you cut the shine, you reduce the red, and you reduce these flyaways. Now, he didn't have flyaways, but he did have a few wild hairs on his eyebrows. And no matter what you do, you want to smooth all of that out. An easy way to do that, and here's a simple trick, is if you have some kind of a hairspray or something like that, you can quickly spray on your hands and then just brush over your hair, and it will reduce the flyaways at least for a little while. And that's just a safe. It gets sticky. You want to wash your hands afterwards, but you can do that. You can also use like a light oil. So if you have some kind of many of you may have something for shine, you can spray a little bit of that on and do that. And it will, you can even see when I do it here that it actually helps. You want to do that so it reduces the frizz and the flyaways, and will help tame that. Because the last thing you want, and especially if you have any kind of green screen, is stuff sticking out. For green screens, they're just going to tell you to try to bring all of that in as much as possible. In fact, my hair, I have very fine hair, and it does kind of what it wants to do. It's horrible for green screens because if one little piece starts like going out this direction, it's just a mess to try to have to fix. So always do that. All right. How are we feeling, everyone? Okay, let's talk about, you ready to talk about makeup? How are we feeling? I want to find out if you've heard enough about tech, if there's anything, before I move on to talking about makeup, if there's anything else that you want to hear. All good? We're good? Okay. So we talked about microphones, we talked about the lighting, we talked about the camera, we talked about the frame and how you need headspace, right? We talked about the background, we've talked a little bit about wardrobe. Oh, recommend the light fixture. Carol, I have a great handout that has links and it has takeaways from what we're talking about today. So I'm going to send that, and I'll send the recording to you, and you can see, because we talked a lot about the lights in the very beginning. Yeah, no, but I'm glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. So makeup. You want to be very aware of where the light hits the face. And for the most aesthetically pleasing look, you want to be thinking about, and are there any painters on here or anyone who really studies this? So if you look at my face as an example, you'll see that there's a lot reflected here, here. It's all coming down here, right? And we've got sort of this T, and you see this across here. This is really good to pay attention to. You always want to be aware of where the light is, because if see how this is in shadow? That's wonderful. That's wonderful for me because if it weren't, it'd be showing things that I don't want to show, right? And so with the lights that are coming in the way that they are, it's cutting into my cheeks, which is good, you know, and you want to be aware of where you're highlighting. Now, I wanted this to be something that men and women could use. So, what I'm going to do to start out and to sort of frame our discussion and then moving out from there is to start about basics that everyone needs to know about essential makeup and grooming when you're about to get on camera. The first thing to know is that the eyebrows frame the face. Now, the eyebrows are having a moment. They've been having a moment for a few years. We went from no eyebrows when I was in the 90s to having like full on, like, let's take up half the forehead eyebrows. Now things are balancing out a little bit. But there's one thing that you can say for sure, and that is eyebrows frame the face. And so you always want to consider filling out, especially women as we get older, but even men, like Alan Greenspan's eyebrows, look at the eyebrows and understand that they're going to be getting, whether people realize they're looking at them or not, they're going to be getting a lot more attention than you realize. And that is because they're directly tied to reading the eye expressions and these micro expressions that happen on the face. People are always looking into someone's eyes to try to figure out, do they really mean what they're saying? What are they saying here? What is that? Are they judging me? Like, we're looking at this in other people's eyes. And the eyebrows frame all of that, and they sort of exaggerate whatever is happening here. So you always want to be mindful of what's happening with them at any time. And one of the things that I would do before I would go out, I might not put on eyeliner, I might not put on eyeshadow, but I will always try to fill this out a little bit, because another thing that happens is whether you were born with very fair hair or not very much hair on your eyebrows, or you have patchy eyebrows. That happens too for all kinds of reasons too. I mean, it could be, you know, that you're fighting illness. It could be because as you've gotten older that our hair comes in differently. What you want to do is try to tie those out, because it can be distracting for other people who are looking at these expressions if they don't somehow match. By the way, they're not twins. They're more like sisters. So if one's a little bit different than the other, it's not the end of the world. It's okay. They're not twins. They're sisters or brothers or both. You know, it's, who knows. The other thing that I want to say, does that make sense? I dropped my brush. Did you ever think about eyebrows framing the face before? I'm not sure. Okay. The other thing that you want to think about is your eyes. You know, are your eyes? You want to be thinking about, are they being read appropriately? I like to exaggerate my eyes a little bit because I want people to understand what I'm talking about as easily as possible. And I want them to pay attention to my eyes. I definitely do. Also because I don't like my nose. And because depending on, you know, how many pies I've baked lately and if I've eaten them or not, I also want to just draw the face or draw the eye up. So anytime anybody's looking at your image, if you want to draw the eye up. This is also, by the way, really good for communication, because we'll read the mouth and we'll read up here. And you want to try to make those things as easy to understand as possible. So I always look at eyebrows, eyes, lips. Cheeks you want to pay attention to when you are on camera, because of what I was saying before, especially if you're using lights. You have to understand that you might get a little bit more washed out than usual. So if I were to open up my window, my curtain over here, you would see that this is actually quite a bit of product that I have on my face right now, but I have to do it so that I don't look like a vampire, and so that I look like I have a little color. And when we get off of this webinar, I'm probably going to bring it down a little bit and pat myself with a powder puff and bring it down a little bit because it's a little bright. However, when you are on a lot of calls, like all of us are, and it's going throughout the day, that's going to continue to, that's going to break down over the day. When I put makeup on, I put it on and I don't want to think about it for the rest of the day. But when you are on video and you're in front of these lights don't throw off a lot of heat, so it's okay. But the lights do add some heat, and so it's going to get a little bit warmer. So you want to be mindful of that too for the shine factor. And if you want to put on a fan in the background or something like that, especially as we approach spring and summer, that might be something that you think about as you consider how many webinars that you're doing in a day. I don't know. I've been on a lot of videos. Friday was a killer video day for me. It started early and it didn't stop. And I thought, wow, there were a couple of weeks where I'm like, this is what it was like when I had time. And then I lost all of the time that I found. So that's something to be mindful of. People ask me sometimes about their lashes. Right now, there's a real critical issue that's happening with a lot of women who rely on lash extensions. And I feel for them. I don't do lash extensions because I know what happens when they grow out. And it can be very disconcerting, especially when you get used to having them in all the time, right? And so what I would suggest is you want to, if you have lash extensions and they are beginning to go away, you might want to start looking at your false lashes to keep your look consistent, especially if they were really pumped up lashes before that you had as extensions. And you can also apply your mascara and put on a few layers rather than just one or two. You want to try to stay consistent with your look. Somebody asked about color on hair earlier. And I wanted to ask a follow-up question about that because is it that in the particular light that you're on, that you're struggling with the way that it reads on the camera? Or is it that for like a lot of us, we have our grays that are starting to show through and things like that? And how do we deal with that? Because there are touch-up sprays and all kinds of stuff that you can do if you just want to stay consistent. Or it's a good time to experiment with growing your gray in, or you can always do something a little bit different, which is to wear a bun or to put it back in a neat ponytail, something like that. What I will say is that if you do opt for ponytails and stuff, really try to look more pulled together with the rest of what's happening, because it can come off as looking a little too casual, I think, when you're showing up for professional meetings. If people are used to seeing you and you're not showing up in ponytails all the time. All right. I didn't see anybody write back about the hair dye. Are you with me? I'm concerned with lighting and my lack of highlights. Lack of highlights. I'm self-conscious about the top of my head because I desperately need highlights from the salon. Okay, so what I will say about this is depending on so first of all, use the touch up my appearance. Check that box for Zoom if you're ever on Zoom. When you jump over to these other platforms, though, that don't have that, like Crowdcast, it's a rude awakening to jump from Zoom to Crowdcast and to have it where it's like, I see everything now. It's like going to HD. It's terrible. But what I would say is most of the time, the camera's kind of forgiving. The camera's actually really forgiving when it comes to hair. It's not forgiving about the flyaways. It's pretty forgiving unless the hair color, unless the demarcation between where your last color was done and the fresh hair, the new hair coming in where that is really dramatic. And in that case, I would try to find some sort of wash-in shampoo that matches that color, or I would try to find some kind of spray that matches that color that's closer to matching what is happening elsewhere. And you can get those sprays online. I myself have one that I use if I know I'm going to be speaking. I haven't had a chance to have like my grays touched up. Like lately, I haven't had any of obviously haven't had my grays touched up, and you can't really see it here. But if you were to look with the natural light on, you'd be able to see that I have right through here and starting to come out that direction. That said, I applied like a little touch up there. It doesn't really work on my hair for very long though, so I'm awaiting a box of hair dye any day now to arrive. And I'm sorry, I do feel for you on the highlights part. Depending on your hair too, if you have lighter hair, you probably also have a little leeway because you know, the camera is not going to be picking as much difference as if I were dyeing my hair darker from a lighter color, then that would become a lot more apparent, and it'd be wiser to fill that in with a darker color at the top. All right. Ooh, Q&A. Wonderful. Heavier makeup or lighter, and large patterns are okay. Larger patterns can be okay. They can be okay. What I will say, I will say a word of caution. I wore a large pattern the other day, and because it was an orange dress, it felt vibrant. It was gray outside, and I thought, you know, I want to wear this dress. It's a large pattern. It's not going to confuse the camera and make it look like it's moving, so that's fine. That said, it looked way better in person than it did on camera. I mean, the patterns, the thing with the larger pattern is that, and here's the thing also. So let me take a step back. The first thing about a larger pattern is that because you have a smaller screen to deal with, they're not getting the overall look, the whole thing. So even if it's a larger pattern on, say, a blouse, they're not getting that there's a solid on the bottom, or they're not getting that that's part of a longer ensemble. And so it's okay if the color makes it make sense. But here's the part two to that I, wanted to jump right into. And that is similar to when we look back at old pictures, and especially when, if you ever get professional pictures done, the patterns are one way to sort of establish a timeline of where things have happened. And so I'm always hesitant to use patterns when I'm going on camera or having pictures taken. And that's just because I know that if I ever want to use it for anything later down the road, aside from the fact that I age, that might be something that is not in fashion at the time, or it might be something that I just look back at and I'm like, wow, I can't use that. And so I don't want to have that situation, so I try to avoid it. But you know what? If you have a fabulous blouse or a fabulous outfit, sometimes it's worth it. So, my challenge is my normally short hair is getting shaggy as stay at home longer. Yeah, it's gray as I've never wanted to color. So I think that's, the shagginess, I'm feeling your pain. I haven't had my hair trimmed in a really long time, and where I'm going with mine, because it's longer, I can do hot rollers and stuff and give it a smoother, which is also good because I have dry, my hair's getting drier as I get older and stuff. However, what I'll say is that we always want to look as pulled together as possible. So you might try to experiment a little bit with the shagginess. You might want to try to experiment a little bit with what would it look like if you went and did something that was like a sleeker look and pulled back. And I see, and then I didn't realize it was Kathy. So Kathy, I know you. So I don't know. Maybe we could talk a little bit about options and even take pictures and do what works best type of thing. A lot of us who are at home are dealing with several things. Like for instance, whether you're dealing with lash extensions or hair coloring situation, or, heaven forbid any of us had fillers or Botox or anything. I wanted to get Botox, and now I want it even more. And I need it. I need it. I see the shadow. I have the touch-up appearance on, and you still see how expressive my face is. So I need just a little. Anyway, it's not going to happen for a while. So this is a really good time to find out a little bit more and experiment a little bit more with how to raise the face up, bring the eye up, and make things look a little bit better. That said, that is what we're always trying to do with makeup. So, especially as we get older. So, for instance, and I'm moving on to the stuff that probably only the women who are listening would want to hear. But when you are thinking about where your cheek line is, right, you want to try to raise just above that. And the reason I'm saying that is because the tendency would be to do this, right? And to go right there, because that seems to be where it naturally wants to go. What I want to encourage you to do is to think about going up and doing a little bit in up here. And when you do that, it draws the eye up a little bit more and raises everything a little bit more. It's the same, you cheat that up here too. So that when you are trying to, I've got mirror on so that I can post things and you can actually see the writing in the right the right angle, but because of that, I'm backwards when I'm trying to do this. So, but I wouldn't use this brush, but you'd want to go just a little bit above rather than directly on your your eyeshadow line right there. You want to go just a little bit above to continue to raise the eye. And so that's something that you can practice doing while you're working on Zoom so much and while you're doing these video teleconference calls, is seeing how you can bring that eye up. All right, short hair here too. I actually bought a headband. It's not great, but it gets the hair out of my face. Not there yet, too short for that yet, but shaggy. Oh my gosh, short hair interventions. I think that that is a great idea. Maybe we should do a thing where we just come together later and try to show our struggle and what we're attempting to solve it with, and then see if it works and see what other people say. That would be kind of like we're workshopping our looks is the way that we're doing that. All right, so large patterns, I answered that. Heavier makeup or lighter, kind of answered that, but also not really. A little bit more color, but I would say you don't want to go too over the top vampy, because if you show up, say for instance that you don't have the 3 light setup, right? And you are depending on more natural light. Well, then if you have more natural light that's coming in from your primary light source, like your window, if you have the natural light coming in, then if you amplify the makeup that you have on in all the different areas, you're going to look garish. It's going to look like too much. So really try to emphasize the areas that you want to highlight. Always focus on making sure that your eyebrows make sense. I can't believe that sentence just came out of my mouth, but it's true. Your eyebrows frame the face. Make sure your eyebrows make sense. And then from there, the structure of the face and what a good balance is something that you can figure out based on your own style. But I will say, make sure that you have some kind of color. If you're a man, a lot of times there's an issue with chapped lips and not having enough color in the skin there. So the recommendation that I have is you can take a little bit of Vaseline, and this is great for everyone. This is great for women too. You can take a little bit of Vaseline and put it on your lips for about 5 minutes. And then if you have a baby toothbrush or a extra soft toothbrush, you can go and brush your lips. And if you brush your lips, not only will it bring color to the surface, but it'll eliminate a lot of the dead skin that is accumulating on your lips and will help you move past that, the worst of the chapped part, so that you can begin to heal them. And then what you want to do after that is then put on a layer of maybe chapstick or something that's going to help, a balm that's going to help preserve the moisture in the lips, but then also to provide, some kind of layer that is protective once you've taken off the chapped flakiness that's on the lips. All right, so I had to pick up my brush. It was bothering me. I had to do it. So here we are. It's almost at 1:30, and I can't believe that this time has just been flying so fast. There are so many more things that I can share. So I want to give you the chance to ask additional questions here. Also, if you have additional questions that I haven't answered and you don't have time to do it, please send them my way. You may have already said, and I just ignore it, I will get later position of camera. Yes, we talked about positioning of camera quite a bit, and I will share that later with you. You have to start a session. Please send me the link so I can get your makeup tips. And if you're going to do a live review of us, please let me know how to engage with this too, of course. Okay, so I will say this. This has been a test, for me where I felt like, and if you have to go, I totally understand. So have a great weekend. And if you celebrate, happy Easter. Thank you for joining me today to do this. I speak about a lot of things, mostly about communication and community, lately more about community and building trust. But this has been an unusual time where I've been able to bring in a side of my life that I've mostly kept hidden from the association space, and where I have sort of built a lot of what I'm known for in that area. And so it's been exciting for me to share it, and also a little nerve-wracking. It makes me feel a little vulnerable to share that, because I'm afraid of not being taken seriously, because this is a side of my life that doesn't tie in easily to and marry well easily with the stuff I usually talk about. That said, this is an unusual time where it does, where communicating better and being able to get your point across and to be taken seriously, it does actually matter how you show up on camera. And I think it can help people if you better connect and take away some of those barriers, which can be as simple as your lighting or your camera angle, or if people can read the expression on your face. It's actually really important, I think, right now to take some of these things into account. So this was kind of a test to see what people thought. If you want more like this, if you think it would be helpful to do additional training, if there are certain areas you want to learn more about, there's more to talk about with the technical side. There's more to talk about with the makeup side. I can definitely go into that. I have a few offerings that I've put together that is at the very end of the handout. That again is a test. If you want to try it out, we can try this out. Usually what I end up doing is I work with people in person on makeup. But if there's something where you want to find out more about going through your makeup bag and applying makeup and seeing how it renders online, and getting advice about what works and what doesn't work and what you can do differently, and if it has to do with the application technique, I can do that. If it is about what brush should I use for this thing, and when do I use this brush, that's something that I can help you with too. If it's something about working on all of it, and maybe looking at, I specifically want to work on improving my appearance and also on the tech side, and I want to work on that over time, that's something we can set up too. If you want to have a makeup party, a virtual makeup party, I was taking my shower this morning and I thought, virtual makeup party, why not? Let me know. I have these offerings kind of described at the end of that 8-page handout I'm sending you. But what I would encourage you to do is to take a look at it. If it's something you think would be interesting, let me know, and I'm happy to give you more information. I am really happy that you participated in this. I hope you can take these lessons and use them. And if you do happen to use this, if you use this information, if you reconfigure your lights, if you reconfigure your camera, if you start wearing more navy and it works really well for you, let me know. Just let me know. Send me a message, post on Twitter, whatever, because I genuinely want to hear back if this is something that helped you out in any way. So thank you so much for being a part of this. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and look for the email. I'm going to send you an email. It's a long PDF. I have all of the takeaways, the advice, maybe some things. I think I covered everything that I meant to, but there might even be a couple of points that I didn't talk about. There are some additional tools. So tools you can use with Zoom, like fireflies.ai, that transcribes all of your Zoom calls so that you can search across them. So little tech things like that that I think are really cool that are included on this handout. And if you have any suggestions for me on additional types of things you'd like to learn about in the future, feedback on how this could be better for you or better for other people if I offer it again, I'd really appreciate it. Love you. Talk to you soon. Be safe and healthy and happy and look fabulous. Have a great weekend, everyone.